Hi everyone, welcome to Makers online Q&A. My name's Hayley. I'm part of the marketing team here at Makers. So today we're going to be joined by Kay Lack, who's our head of training here at Makers. She'll be answering some of your questions about how the remote course is going to work. And then we'll be moving on to meeting some of our alumni. We'll meet Sam. He did the online course with Makers. And we'll also meet Natalie and Mackenzie, who recently completed the on-site course. So the way that today is going to work, you guys can ask your questions in the Q&A panel. There's probably a few of you who've got like reasonably similar questions. So if you see one that you'd like answering, you can upvote the question. That means that the Q&A won't get too clogged up or anything. And so hopefully we can get through the questions just a little bit more efficiently. And then anything that we don't have time to answer in today's session, we're going to gather everything up for you and we'll be posting that in a follow-up blog post. So let's get started with today's Q&A. So this is a bit of a breakdown, like I said, some basic info on the online course, and then Kay will answer those questions. So if you have any questions about the actual delivery of the course online, answer those now, and we'll do that in the first section, and then we'll move on to kind of life as a maker, how we support you in finding a job, all of that kind of thing. Cool. So this is some important info to share with you guys. So the April and May cohorts are going to be fully remote. So that basically means if the recommendations from the government change at all, we're still going to deliver those two courses fully remotely. And the reason that we're basically going to be doing that is because obviously some of you might be joining us from outside of London or from abroad, and obviously we wouldn't want to suddenly switch and say that you had to come on site. It would just be too stressful for you and also obviously for us. So if you're applying for April and May, the whole course will be delivered remote. So a little bit about how the course works. So the delivery is still very much the same. So students meet with the coaches online every day, and they do remote goal setting. So it's basically saying what you want to achieve that day. And you'll also be pair programming in the same way as you do in the Makers on-site course, like how we've done that previously. We also still offer the full emotional intelligence curriculum. That's the EI curriculum. What that means is obviously we're really kind of committed to supporting student well-being. We have our Chief Joy Officer, Dana, who offers a whole curriculum about how to kind of manage your emotions and work with others during the course. She'll still be delivering that whole side of the programme completely remotely. And I think we've got some materials going up on our blog about the different sessions that she's been running with the students so far. What else do we have? Career support, yeah. So again, that's the same thing. Once you finish Makers, we run a careers fair. You have access to our careers coaches and also, you know, our full partnerships team. They're still offering their events fully remotely as well. We did our first remote careers fair last week, and so you'll still be able to log in online, meet our hiring partners in the same way, and kind of go through the job hunting process that way. So those are the top level things. Hopefully some of you guys will have seen our FAQ and also our blog post that we're updating regularly with different aspects about the delivery. So please look there if there's anything that you've not seen so far. I'm just going to see if there's any questions that we have at this point to ask Kay. Okay, so we've got a question from Kobe. So Kay, the question is, what's the teaching style like and pacing of the overall programme?
Hi, Kirby. Am I visible
Oh, I'm not
and
sure if we can
everything?
hear you, sorry.
Okay. Well, some people can hear me. Uh, Great. Okay,
Okay, no, we're all good.
great. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and answer this question.
Thanks.
And I see that Kobe can hear me. Great. So the teaching style and the pacing, that's the question. The teaching style at Makers is primarily, so we're here to try to get you into a software engineering job, and software engineering people in their role are independent people, and so our course is designed to gradually introduce that independence in you. So we're about as hands-on as you need us to be, and about as hands-off as you need us to be. To use a particular example, the first day is reasonably well attended to. There's a coach with you all of the time, or attentive all the time. And then in the first few weeks, there is a degree less of attention. So you're spending most of your time either in morning workshops with a coach, discussing things, paying attention to things, being challenged on your work. And then in the afternoon, you're pairing with your fellows in the cohort. And then as the course progresses through to sort of week 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and beyond, you're operating much more independently in groups together with coach check-ins, and then most support from that point on is self-serve. So there'll be people around, but if it's sort of in a job, if you're getting your work done, then we're mostly assuming that you're on the right tracks and trusting you because we've helped you make this judgment when you need to be unblocked and when you're okay to keep going on your own, with the then vision that when you're in a job interview and in your first job, you're generally quite independent and you know when to surface things with your manager, but mostly, you're the sort of person who people want to hire. That's people who are sort of autonomous, self-sustaining, growing and learning, and who know when to, ask for help at the right times without always needing it. Haley's gone very still, so I'm pretty sure that I'm pretty sure that none of that actually just got lost in the transmission.
No, I think that was all good.
Great.
Thank you so much for that. So we have another question saying they're starting Makers in April. In case a student gets ill, considering the current situation, thus missing learning, how will it be possible for them to catch up? And will everything covered that day be available online?
Yeah, really, really good question. I think really responsible to think about these things. So we try and take a reasonably generous approach to illness. Of course, people get ill from time to time. Things happen in people's lives, and so we are generally, if something goes wrong, if you get ill, then we're here to support. And so if something goes really wrong and you miss a couple of weeks due to illness, then we're always interested in helping you move on to the next cohort who joined after you, so that you can continue at the pace that you needed to. If you don't need that, which in most cases people don't, our course it's delivered from materials that are almost all available to you. So there are some teaching guidelines that the coaches pay attention to, but when it comes to exercises, when it comes to workshops, when it comes to anything along those lines, like, we believe that you should be in the driving seat. And so if you're someone who can catch up, if it's a brief illness, then you'll have the full autonomy to be able to do that, and the full coach support to be able to do that as well.
Lovely, thank you. So the next one that we have is saying, it's from James. It's saying, now that Makers does remote boot camps, does this mean that in future it will run concurrently with on-site courses, or will there be one cohort remote and one cohort on-site? So I'm guessing this is looking kind of beyond the coronavirus situation.
So I guess the way I'm going to interpret this question is, are they going to, run simultaneously or maybe in a sort of staggered way? We don't really know what the answer to that will be. It will depend, I think, on this, how things progress. The thing that we're most interested in is ultimately helping people learn, serving people in the way that is right for them and that we can do safely, and ultimately helping people get jobs. And we'll be led by that, but we don't have any concrete plans much further in the future, other than we're going to keep doing what we do best.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. So we also have a question. Is it possible to apply for a later start date, for example, in July or August, if they prefer not to do the remote version?
Great question. At the moment, no. You can always reach out and you can always engage with what we put out online and have a conversation. Maybe try the support materials for preparing for your interview. But we don't really know how the situation is going to evolve beyond the cohorts that we currently have open, and so we are, we wouldn't want to. I guess if we are putting, asking people to accept places on those cohorts under the expectation that they're on site, we can't really guarantee that being, the case yet. And so we wouldn't want to take anyone, help anyone take any decisions on that basis until we know sure what the situation is going to be like. And so that's why we've got only those 2 cohorts open at the moment.
Okay, thank you. We're going to take a couple more of these and then we'll be moving on to the questions for our alumni. So as I mentioned, if you have any questions about for someone who's completed the online course or completed our on-site course, if you'd like to start submitting those in now, that would be great. I'll just ask a couple more of these while we're waiting for those to come in. Slightly different angle to this one. Do you have any advice for someone who's going to be working at home in the April or May cohorts, if they don't necessarily have a home office or they're not used to working from home?
Yeah, great question. I think so. We're in general, the whole coaching team is here to support you with this. But one thing is you want to make sure that your working environment is as good as it can be. You want to make sure that you're set up to take regular breaks, that your seat is, appropriately arranged and stuff like that. But I guess you'll know how to make that work. Sometimes when people ask this question, it's a little bit about feelings of isolation or loneliness. One of the probably great things about our remote course, given the circumstances, is that certainly every day and for multiple hours each day, you'll be working directly with somebody else, and you'll have a lot of more contact with people than you're likely to have in your job, and certainly that I have in my job right now, because it's an intensive collaborative process. And so I think you'll be well set up in that. So just make sure that your chair is right, and we'll support you with the rest. And I guess if you have the opportunity to beef up your internet connection, that wouldn't go amiss either.
Lovely, thanks, Kay. The last one I'm going to take on this section, just because I can see a couple coming in for our alumni now, and like I said, we will answer them later, is I'm worried about the job market. I'm worried what the job market will look like in a few months. Reassure me. I think that's one that a lot of people will be wondering.
Great. Some great phrasing there. I'm not going to try and reassure you. I think instead I'm going to give you the simple answer, which is that after taking our course, you will be in a better position to get a job than you are now, because you're going to have more skills, you're going to have this experience, you're going to be able to put this on your CV, and so you're only going to be in a better position. It's nobody can say what the world is looking like, but this is a great way to position yourself well for the coming months, and it's certainly going to make things better when it comes to your prospects.
Cool, that's brilliant. Thank you so much, Kay.
Thank you.
Cool. so feel free to hang around if you like. So I'm going to move on to some questions for our alumni now. I know that a lot of you will still have lots of questions about the delivery of the course, and we're going to do our best to kind of keep you updated just based on the questions that you have coming in. So do still submit your questions if you have anything related to that side of things. I should be able to take the next one that's on here before we move over to our alumni. Someone's asking, I want to join the May cohort. Are there still spaces left? And when should I apply by? I've started the Ruby course on Codecademy, and how long is the application process? So there are definitely spaces in the May cohort, and it's good that you're preparing now, especially, you know, as most of us have more time working from home at the moment. If you're already preparing your materials, that should be, this is a really good amount of time. The best time to apply is once you've completed Codecademy and when you've got 100 points on Code Wars. So it's very dependent on, you know, how much you're working, how much time that you have to commit to it, but you definitely need to have those things under your belt to be ready for the pair programming session. So you know how you work kind of better than we do. So as long as you've given yourself ample time to really get to know those resources, that's the best time for you, basically. In terms of the actual application process itself, you'll need to write your motivation letter. All we're looking for in that is 2 really good quality paragraphs about the resources that you've practiced, why you want to be a developer, and kind of why you've chosen Makers as well, just so that we know that our learning environment is the right one for you. And once we've had your application, you'll receive a response from our admissions team. I think it's within 24 or 48 hours that they're pretty on it with getting back to you. And they'll let you know if they want to hear, you know, just a little bit more about what you've done, or if they think, you know, you sound ready to come in for your interview, then they'll send you a calendar invite and you can book in your pairing session. Lovely. So we're going to move on to our alumni now. So if you all wouldn't mind popping your cameras back on for us so we can meet you all. Have we got everybody? Yes, we do. Great stuff. Okay, cool. So if we kick things off before we go back to the questions, if we could go down the road, Sam, I'm going to start with you. If you could just let us know a little bit about yourself, when you were at Makers, and what you're working as now, that'd be great.
Sure, absolutely. So I did the Makers course in January of 2017. So I think I graduated almost like 3 years ago to the day, any time around now 3 years ago. So prior to doing Makers, I was a primary school teacher, so had no kind of previous background in tech or anything sort of remotely related to this, really. I sort of started teaching myself a little bit for maybe 6 months to a year before attending the course, and eventually decided that I wanted to kind of jump in and do this instead of teaching. So I did the course 3 years ago. I am now working at a company called Eighth Light. It's a software development consultancy based in Chicago. There's a couple of offices throughout the United States and one here. So what that means is that I get to kind of work on a bunch of different projects and a bunch of different languages and technologies, and do all kinds of kind of pretty fun stuff. So I quite enjoy doing that.
Cool, brilliant. Thanks so much. Moving on to you, Natalie, same thing. What were you doing before Makers? And can you tell us what you're doing now?
Hi. So I was on the October course of Makers. The October just gone. And yeah, September pre-course. Before I did Makers, I started actually off as a management consultant and did that for a few years. And then I worked for a fintech for a year. And it was there that I sort of started dabbling in coding and working with developers as part of my role, and where I really got interested in software engineering. And yeah, I started attending lots of meetups outside of work and trying it online. And yeah, it's where I how I discovered Makers. And now I work for a company called RVU, and they own a few of the comparison sites, such as uswitch and money.co.uk, and a Bankrate.
Lovely, thanks so much. And Mackenzie, same to you, please.
Yeah, sure. So hello, everyone. I was part of the August 2019 cohort, so a little bit before Natalie, July 19 pre-course. I was in furniture sales, so high-end furniture, so sales, so totally different. I kind of dabbled in software development a little bit, kind of worked my way through a few Udemy courses and a few other bits and pieces, but really came in with very, very little experience. And I graduated in November of 2019 last year, and then I've been working for Trader.io since January, and a kind of an integration company. So if you had one software, let's say Slack or Salesforce or something like that, and then you want to integrate it with another software, that's effectively what they would do. So they'd bring those two pieces of software together, and then allow you to integrate them.
Okay, lovely stuff. Thanks, everyone. So we're going to dive back into the questions that have been coming in on the Q&A. So we've got a question asking, I was wondering what kind of CV we'll be able to show prospective employers after the 3 months at Makers. For example, final projects and completed, for instance, will we have final projects or completed projects that can demonstrate our abilities? So I'm just going to pass them between you. So maybe starting off with you, Sam. How did your portfolio kind of help you with job hunting, or like what advice did Makers give, with the projects that you've done during the course?
Sure. So yeah, over the course of the 12 weeks that you're on site, you'll have the opportunity to kind of build several sort of medium-sized sort of life-size projects, including as the kind of weeks progress towards in the second half of the course in particular, you start building some more kind of significant pieces of software, working in teams to produce like larger code bases. So by the close of the 12 weeks on site, you do have a portfolio of things which you can show to employers. Certainly, the advice when I was doing the course was that you put together like a CV on GitHub. If you haven't used GitHub yet, it's a website that allows you to like publish code basically. So you'll be provided with a bunch of opportunities to build things and some guidance on how to best kind of present those projects as well. So by the time you've kind of graduated from the course, you can sort of show what you're able to do, and perhaps almost kind of more importantly really, demonstrate the kind of progress that you've made from the start of the course to the end, because you fit in a lot over the course of the 12 weeks, and you learn a great deal and you progress a great deal. So yeah, absolutely, you're going to have like a portfolio of stuff that you can show to potential employers, and also because you've been kind of immersed in doing this for 12 weeks, you're going to develop the kind of vocabulary that you need to talk about those projects as well, and really explain to somebody why what you've done is sort of significant and interesting.
Cool, thanks so much. Natalie, just in terms of projects, was there anything in particular, any project in particular that stood out or helped you in the job hunting process?
Yeah, so definitely, I think you'll definitely have many projects that you can include on your CV. I included my final project, I think another one that I did close, in week 10, and some even that I did earlier on as well, the course, because, employers who are looking at your CV know that you're fresh out Makers and you don't have a huge amount of experience yet, so they're not looking for, they know that you're not going to have any professional software engineering projects on there. So, anything that you're proud of, you'd be encouraged to sort of put on your CV to show off. And as Sam mentioned, there's plenty of support. So there's a careers coaching team, Toby and Bex, who are great, and they will do one-on-one CV sessions with you as well, and review your CV so that you can, make sure that you're happy with it. So yeah, there's, and also I just want to add as well that you are also encouraged to put your previous experience on there as well, because again, the employers sort of know that you have a history before Makers, and they're also interested in that too. So it's not just going to be about what you did at Makers, it's going to be a combination of both your previous experience and what you did at Makers.
Fab, thank you so much, Natalie. So the next one we have had come in is, are the tasks given in line with what you'd experience in the workplace or purely theoretical? So Mackenzie, I'm going to pass this one your way. Can you talk a little bit about what you learned on the course kind of transferred to what it's like kind of as a day-to-day developer?
I think generally Makers is kind of very up to date with what you learn and what you do in the world of work. I mean, from my point of view, at least, the language you mainly focus on is JavaScript. I did a lot of that in Makers, and the general kind of theoretical concepts you learn, obviously, like classes and objects and manipulating data, so on and so forth. That's hugely relevant to what I do. So in that sense, I think Makers puts you on a pretty good stead. It can't do everything, of course. That there are certain things, I think, inevitably that when you go into a place of work that you don't know, and Makers is a 3-month course, so obviously you clearly can't learn everything about computer science within the 3 months. But what Makers very good at is kind of teaching you other things around the theoretical side. So you'll learn kind of all you need to learn to be a junior developer, but you'll come into a job with a hell of a lot more other things that maybe actual CS grads don't have. And that's even been mentioned, not particularly about myself, but just in general, because Trey has a lot, I think has something like 10 makers now work for it, 10 or 11, something like that. So it has a lot of makers working for it. I think that's something that's even been kind of reacted or has been told to myself, that why Trey keeps coming back to hire from makers and hire makers graduates is just for that, is that you learn an awful lot outside of the main curriculum, as well as still getting the basis, or as much as you can get within the kind of 3 months itself.
Fab, thank you so much. So there's a couple of these that I can answer just from the staff side of things. So we've had a few people ask, what's the class size? The average size is 25. It never goes above that. I think, most often it's between 23 to 25. So there was 2 of you asking that. Okay, so we had to Sam. How did you find the remote version of the course? Specifically, they're asking about community pairing, that side of things.
Cool. So to address the pairing question, first of all, there are a whole bunch of tools out there which allow you to deal with pairing remotely. So in my current work now, I still do a lot of remote pairing. Zoom is a great tool to kind of help you do that. There are others out there as well, largely dependent on personal preference, what you want to use. So I think from the aspect of pairing, like, it works really well. I actually kind of prefer remote pairing, possibly just because it's something that I've done more of than in person, but it's definitely doable. In terms of the community aspect, obviously you're not on site with a bunch of other people going through the course at the same time as you, and so I guess there is a bit of a sort of distancing effect in that regard. However, I think as long as you make the kind of, you probably need to make a little bit more of an effort to communicate and to stay engaged with the other people in your cohort. But I think as long as you are making that effort, it can still work really well. Again, there are a bunch of tools which you can use for that. I know Makers uses Slack a lot for kind of communication, and then obviously tools like Zoom as well allow you to kind of chat in person too. Certainly for my cohort at least, we would often kind of stay on Zoom calls kind of before or after the end of the day, just to kind of chat and talk to people. It is an intensive course. You do spend a lot of time in front of your computer. So if you're doing it remotely, inevitably, you are going to spend a lot of time in your bedroom or your living room or wherever you might be working from. But I think, yeah, it's still very possible to kind of benefit from that feeling of community, as long as you're kind of actively making the space for doing so.
Lovely, thanks, Sam. And I guess from our side of things as well, in the time that we've been kind of fully remote in the last kind of week or so, I know there's a big effort from the team to kind of help facilitate community activities. Tommy, who's our community manager, works a lot with, looking at what he can do to run some of our alumni events remotely, and all that kind of thing. So there is a lot of effort in trying to kind of facilitate the community side of things as much as we can for you. So there's a few more that I can hopefully answer. Have you had many mature candidates come through your program, 40 years plus? Yeah, we have done. I think the full range has been kind of between 18 to 65, I think was the top end. But yeah, most people kind of fall around like the 30-ish mark. But there's kind of advantages and disadvantages to both sides. Sometimes I know that people who are kind of like 40 plus have gone into slightly more senior roles. If you look on the Makers blog, there's a couple of posts about some of our students and the kind of like different journeys and backgrounds they've had. There's a lady called Kate Morris, and I think she got hired into a more senior position. So sometimes employers do look for that. So it kind of just depends. Going back to you guys, so Natalie, in fact, I'll ask this to all of you, if you could maybe jump in first, Natalie. Just why did you pick Makers? And why did you pick Makers to do your bootcamp? So yeah, did you look at anywhere else as well?
Yeah, sure. So I did. I looked at quite a few. I looked at all the sort of major ones out there. And ultimately, I picked Makers for a few reasons. So I did a search on my LinkedIn for Makers, and a couple of people in my network popped up who had done it before. So I spoke to them and they all had really good things to say about Makers and highly recommended it. And one thing they did stress was that the reputation among employers was really good with Makers, and this was something that all of them said without me sort of prompting. So that was a big, I think, win for me, because I think ultimately you're choosing to do one of these courses because you want to get a job at the end of the day. And so, yeah, that definitely influenced my decision a lot. And another reason was because, I really liked the sort of education philosophy. And you've sort of heard a bit about it already, but it's, all about sort of self teaching. Obviously there is coaching there, but it's but the whole sort of philosophy is to teach you to be able to learn and pick up new languages easily, because obviously the course is only 3 months. So actually, that is the sort of the best. That's not going to be it's a short amount of time, and so you want to be able to learn skills that will enable you to pick up new skills quickly, because you're not going to be able to learn absolutely everything on the course. So yeah, it was a combination of those things, as well as meeting people, coming to events like this, and getting a feel for the culture. So yeah, side note, I would recommend getting on LinkedIn if you aren't already. And yeah.
Cool, thanks, Natalie. Mackenzie, did you were you kind of weighing up between a couple of boot camps? Like, what swayed it for you?
Yeah, I was. So all the main ones. So as I'm sure you guys have I'm sure done your research on. So Flatiron and Llewellyn and General Assembly, all of the kind of main ones alongside Makers. The main reasons, to be honest, why I chose Makers, I think Natalie might have kind of gone over a couple of the points anyway. But the first one was just the holistic approach to learning, I suppose, and kind of Makers' attitude to, or how they treat their students throughout the process, because obviously it is a very, very intense, or certainly for me as well, at least it was a very, very intense 12 weeks. And you go through ups, you go through downs. It's kind of very much like a roller coaster. But Makers is really, really good. And I got the impression before the course, and that proved to be the case during the course, they're really, really good at supporting you. There's meditation, there's yoga, you can reach out to anybody. There's loads of coaches. You can reach out to people on your cohort. You can reach out to your mentor, who will be 2 cohorts above you, I think. So there's a lot of people to reach out to. So that was one reason. And the second reason was more of a, I suppose, sort of just, don't quite know how to phrase it, but effectively was just for the careers, basically, because that was my main aim, to get a job after the course. And I just had to make a judgment on the course that I felt would get me a job the fastest. And I just think that Makers has a really, really good careers team. They have, I think, 9 or 10 people in the whole team, and they're always looking out for you and putting you in opportunities. So yeah, it will be those 2 factors, I think, how Makers kind of treats its students and the careers work that they do afterwards.
Lovely, thanks everyone. So we've got a few more coming in. So we have a question here from Jerome asking, how is work life generally? Is it hard to transition from your previous career to, I guess, now life as a developer? So maybe Sam, if you wanna start us off with that one.
Sure, yeah. So as I mentioned, I was a primary school teacher previously. So certainly my job now is very different from what I was doing before, in every way imaginable. So certainly there was a transition to be made there. I guess to some extent the answer to that question is likely to depend on what you've done before. Perhaps some of you have done things which are sort of related to software development, in which case you probably know a little bit more about the sort of processes and that are involved. I was coming from something very, very different, and so there were some things that I needed to learn how to do and how to navigate. I suppose perhaps the most challenging thing for me was going into a role where, like particularly as a junior developer, and indeed throughout your career as a developer, you're always going to be in a place where you're being confronted with things you don't know how to do, and questions you don't know the answer to. And I think one of the sort of key skills of being a good developer is being able to say, or, confront the fact that you don't know everything, and kind of expose that that kind of vulnerability. So kind of learning to do that and be comfortable with that, and accepting that I sort of was never going to know everything about this job that I'm now doing, was a little bit tricky at first, for sure. There were certainly other challenges as well, but that was probably the biggest thing for me, was kind of that switch of mindset towards being able to go, yeah, I'm doing this thing professionally, but there's still plenty about it that I don't know.
And Natalie, you're reasonably new into your new role. How have you found kind of like the transition over the past few weeks and months?
Yeah, so I was also doing something quite different before, because I wasn't doing, although I was working with developers, I definitely wasn't doing any developing. So it has been quite a transition. I'd say the hours are definitely better. And everyone is sort of really supportive and nice. I have to say, one of the things that did attract me about the tech industry was how supportive the community is. And I don't think that that does stop when you sort of start working as well as a developer. I think that's something that differentiates it from other industries, where sometimes teams can be, depending obviously what you're doing, but if I take what I was doing, for example, management consulting and business development, that can be, I guess, a bit more competitive. Whereas with developers, you're sort of working as one team towards one goal. And you don't, it doesn't feel, you don't have to feel afraid of sort of asking for help, because generally everyone is going to want to help you and it's in their interest too. So yeah, I've found it's obviously not been without its challenges. Like as Sam mentioned, you know, there are a lot of new things to, and there are going to be a lot of things that you don't know. But it's yeah, I felt like I'm in a sort of safe environment where I can ask for that help. So it has been, it has been good, a good transition.
Lovely, thanks, Natalie. By the way, if you're submitting a couple of questions, I know there are a few there which were maybe aimed more at Kay or some of the staff. We've got them written down, and we can answer those, like I say, in the follow-up content afterwards. So we do have another question come in asking, so as an entry-level developer, what were your kind of expectations from your employers after the course? Do you feel that you were kind of equipped after 3 months for your new role? Mackenzie, if you could let us know how you feel about that one, please.
Yeah, I think I probably mentioned it. Like generally, I felt well equipped. I think I was quite fortunate in the sense that going to Trey, they were like a pro bootcamp employer, so to speak. So they were quite aware of the things you came with and the things that you'd bring to the job, and equally were sometimes aware of the things that inevitably you kind of, there'll be a certain level that you won't be able to go into. And there are certainly times within my job at the minute, just give you an example, we were doing like APIs, which if you end up joining the course, you'll very much get into, and how you authenticate and so on and so forth. And there were just bits that I didn't know, simply because there is a level of expertise that you just don't go into. But I think if you find the right employer and you find a good spot, they're quite aware and they're quite knowledgeable of what you bring into the role. And even though maybe you might get stuck on an API, you'll be really good. My job's quite customer facing, so they'll be bringing you in knowing you'll be really good at customer facing stuff, or knowing that you'll be really good at a different part of the job. So I think it's quite employer focused, but Trey is very, very good at Makers is very, very good at like the companies they work with. And I got that job through Makers. They're really, really good at making sure those companies kind of work for you as well as you work for the companies. So if you go through the careers team, you'll probably, if you get a job through the careers team, you'll, I'm sure, land in a spot where people know what you can bring to the job, and they know you might take a bit of time to learn, and they know they might need to give you a little bit of space to do that. But they'll do so. So broadly, I did feel pretty prepared for everything that I've kind of faced so far.
Cool, lovely, thanks so much. So there's a few that hopefully I can help out with. So Christina's asking, if someone has a part-time job, for example, 2 days a week, would that be too difficult to follow? So generally speaking, we don't suggest working at all during the course. I know that obviously now that the course is remote, like you might feel that you have some more time. We don't recommend, as I say, working at all, just to give you the best possible opportunity to do as well as you can on the course. It is very intense, you know, whether it's, you know, remote or on site. So realistically, if you're looking to apply, it's best to do that at a time when you can really dedicate the kind of the full duration of the course to doing that. Okay, we have one from Robert. Without prying into specifics, what kind of salary bracket could we be expecting in our first junior developer role? Who wants to take that one? Okay.
I'll grab it if needs be, or
Yeah, go on then.
yeah, all right, sweet. So I think, as I said, you might know, or Haley might have a slightly different, might know slightly differently, but I think certainly when I was doing it, the average salary was, I think, 32,000, maybe 32,000, 32,500, something like that. Obviously I won't go into the specifics of my salary, but I'm ever so slightly above that. And I think that quite a bit of my cohort were either around there, above it. I think some of them have come in above me, some of them are a bit below me. But certainly from when you finish the course, you'll get onto the careers team, and then you get jobs that effectively come through, and you can see jobs whether you'd like to apply for them or not. Within the time frame I was doing that, so I was kind of looking for maybe 6 weeks or so was the total of my job hunt. I don't think I saw one London job that was lower than 30. Again, I might be corrected on that, but certainly within that period, I don't think I saw one London job that's lower than 30. So 30 to 35, 35 to 40, a few above 40, kind of that sort of range, I think certainly for myself. And I think most of my cohort, although I've not clearly spoken to them specifically, are kind of very much in that vicinity.
Yeah, thanks, Mackenzie. And I would say that's that is reflective of the salaries we see. We've recently completed a survey of our alumni over the last 7 years, which I'm actually going to share with you at the end of this event. And that shows the average starting salary and also the earning trajectory that you can expect. I think it's 1, 3 and 5 years out of makers. So yeah, for our hiring partners, it's around 32,000, the starting salary. Obviously, there are sometimes different things that affect it. For example, if you've been working, even if it's in a different industry for 5 years as a manager, you might get a slightly higher starting salary than someone who's just finished university and gone to makers. So little things like that still do apply, but generally speaking, that's 32 is pretty representative of what we do see. Okay, so the next one is asking, all of the alumni have said that they've dabbled in some development before makers, be it on their own or through teams. Is it necessary to have some experience? So I can start this off, and then maybe if we could hear a bit more about the resources that you guys used. As I mentioned, we really recommend starting your learning on your own before you start makers. So it doesn't have to be anything, any resources that you have to pay for or anything professional at all. We just really want to see that you've committed to learning, that you can get yourself in the habit of practicing coding every day, and just that you're at a base level to give yourself the best chance to pass your pairing session. So I can send some recommendations in the follow-up of some other resources that we recommend, as well as Code Academy and Code Wars. Could anyone jump in? Maybe Sam, was there anything that you found helped, any resources that you can recommend from when you were first starting to code?
Sure. From what I can remember, I mean, you mentioned Code Academy, Code Wars. They're both really great resources. Free Code Camp is another thing which I am aware of and have kind of looked at in the past. I think that's quite a sort of in-depth curriculum that you can work through there, to kind of, that would be great preparation if you were to go through some of that stuff. There's another site which I use occasionally called Exercism, EXERCISM, which has kind of learning tracks for specific languages. There is a Ruby track on there, and that's a site which kind of presents you with little self-contained coding challenges for you to solve. Once you submit your solution, a professional developer will have a look at it for you and kind of feedback on it. Feedback can be a little bit slow, but it can be like, it's a really useful thing to get somebody who has a bit more experience to look at your code and kind of give you pointers on what you can improve and what you might want to learn about next. So I think that's a great resource to have a look at as well.
Cool, that's great, thank you. Is there anything else that you, Mackenzie, or Natalie could recommend? Were there any other meetups or groups or different resources that you found were helpful?
There's learnrubythehardway.org, which is, I think, a book and a PDF, but I think you can get it free online, and it's a online Ruby free course. I also went to CodeBar, and they're great because they have, I think Makers sometimes host or used to host them. They do, they might have moved remote now, would have to check, but basically they do sessions every Wednesday, and you get assigned to a coach for the hour, or how 2 hours, I think. And it's great because they'll help you sort of work through with you whatever you're working on. So I went to CodeBar, and trying to think, free code camp, but Sam already mentioned that. That's great as well. Although that's just CSS, HTML, and JavaScript, but that will be useful further on in the course. Just having a grounding in HTML, CSS, and JavaScript will serve you well when you join.
Lovely, thanks so much. So obviously, finding a job is a lot of people's priority. And so we've got a question coming from Robert asking how we prepared for technical tests when we interview with potential employers. So I mentioned a little bit earlier that we have our careers service. That's kind of like a two-sided team. So we've got half of the team who work to connect you with employers around London and slightly outside of that. They bring them in and see if they'd like to come on board with us as a hiring partner, and they'll present at our careers fair. The other side of the team are the careers coaches. So we have Toby and Bex, and they help with anything to do with interview skills, kind of how to get your CV ready, all sorts of things. They run workshops and one-to-ones, and they're still doing those remotely. Mackenzie, did you kind of check in with Bex or Toby at all when you were job hunting?
Yeah, so Bex was really good, was kind of my main resource. And she's really good because you can go to her with CV issues, and if you've got anything you're not sure about, how to kind of best prepare yourself for interviews. They also do a kind of an interview prep that you can have as well, which is really useful because that gives you an idea of kind of less of the technical side of the interview, but more of the personality side of the interview, which I certainly didn't realize going in, certainly through my interviews that I had with different companies, how big a factor that actually is. And for a lot of places, it's just as big, if not more important. But you can practice those with the makers, which is really good. And there's also something called process. I think they're process workshops. It's awful that I might have already forgotten what they're called, having left so few months ago, but I think process workshops. And they're really useful as well because you can go to them and they can really help build up your technical skills. And they're with somebody outside of makers, so kind of an independent judge, I suppose, on your ability. So they're really good, and they can also continue after the makers course is actually finished. I did one when my course had finished, just to kind of prepare myself. They're kind of mini little hour kind of tech tests, just to kind of prepare myself for anything that I'd actually come up against in a real life interview. I think mute might still be on. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks so much for that, Mackenzie. So we've got a question coming from Jerome, which I guess is more for myself to answer. Would it be easy to get a job and move abroad with a company once you graduate, or would you need more years experience? Yeah, so we have had makers who have who've moved abroad and are working there. Generally, I don't know if you mean kind of in terms of like freelancing or working directly with a company. In terms of the kind of jobs that we offer and the hiring partner network that we have, as I mentioned, most of those are kind of in and around London. That's just where our expertise and most of our connections have been over the past like 7 years that we've been running. I guess if you were looking to work somewhere further afield, once you graduate, you do become part of our alumni community, and you communicate on Slack, which, if you've not used that before, that's the messaging platform that everyone is added to. And if you wanted to specifically reach out to people, that's the best place to kind of see if you know how they went about doing that, and obviously, hopefully, if any of those people are hiring as well. Cool. So we had a question asking about Python. Is Python part of the course curriculum? It's not something that we directly include, but in the final project section of the course, the students are kind of welcome to use any language they like to build a project of their choosing. It's completely free, the tech stack that they use. So maybe Sam, I'll start off with you. If you could tell us about how your final project was, and then we'll, if you could let us know the different tech that you guys used in your different projects.
Sure. So again, it was a couple of years back now, so I'm having to kind of dig back into my memory to remember exactly what we used. The final project team I was a part of made a little kind of augmented reality mobile app. It was like a kind of GPS based treasure hunt, basically. So I think it was built in C#. Was it C#? Not C#. No, it would have been Swift. But yeah, I think we did it in Swift. So just such a long time ago. Yeah, so it was like an iPhone application built in Swift, which was a language which none of us had any experience of using prior to doing our final project. So it was tough, but the course had prepared us sufficiently well to be able to kind of get up and running relatively quickly with a brand new technology, and yeah, build this pretty cool little thing. So it kind of, you walked around and it gave you a clue as to where you were supposed to go, and when you got near, like a thing would appear on your phone camera spinning, and it was great.
Cool. Sorry to put you on the spot there. Like, yeah,
yeah,
from like 3 years ago. Tell us about
it. Yeah, it's a while.
No worries. Maybe Natalie, Mackenzie, what did you guys use, and which tech did you use in your final project?
Yeah, sure. So I, for my final project, that was built as well in a completely new stack, using technology that none of us had used previously. So we did it in MERN. That's MongoDB, Express, React, Node.js. And yeah, we also made a bunch of sort of external API calls like to Google Maps. And again, hadn't really done much of that before either. So our app was Green City Mapper. So it's like a travel app for the eco-conscious. It allowed you to sort of search for journeys, and then we'd return the carbon emissions for your journeys and allow you to save that to a dashboard as well, so you could see your kind of carbon over time. And yeah, there are quite a few other project teams in our cohort as well who used, I think in fact every team used a new technology stack. And there were a couple of teams that learned Python as well. And also Python is fairly easy to learn once you've learned Ruby. Syntactically, I think they're quite similar. That's the feedback that I've got from people who have learned Python after learning Ruby. So.
Cool, thanks so much. And Mackenzie, what was your final project? Did you guys use Python at all?
We didn't, but again, we had somebody in our cohort who did use Python. They made a really cool like chess app, so that you could use on Slack, and it was kind of not quite like official chess, but kind of had different rules and acted a bit differently, and that was really cool and really fun to play. And they built that all out in Python, which again they'd not seen before. And I'd probably echo Natalie's comments that from what I heard about it, I think it's actually, when you do the Ruby, which you do as part of the course, it's relatively easy to learn, I think, because it's all fairly similar. Myself, I did the same as Natalie, actually, the same stack. So the MERN stack, which I think I chose just because it's so popular at the minute and is so like in demand from potential employers. I know that I use JavaScript a lot in my line of work, and we also use React. I'm not really working the front end, but we also use React in the front end. So certainly where I work, it's very popular. That's why I use that. And I just built out a kind of a food app whereby you could log on and then put in food that was currently expiring in your fridge. And then you could find out all your people who live close to you, and then find out what food they had expiring, and then you could make up recipes from that. And then also use Google Maps to just get a little route that you could build out. So you could go and get the food and then go and build a recipe off of local food that was in your local area that was expiring. So I use the MERN stack as well, but again, people did so many different things for their final project. It really just kind of the only limit is your imagination, really, and the time. You have 2 weeks. That's obviously slightly a limit as well. But yeah, you really can do what you want for it.
Can see some smiling faces there from Mackenzie and Natalie when you mentioned the time. I think like the final project's kind of a rush by a little bit. Cool. So the last questions that we have, they're mainly sort of ones that hopefully I can answer. So unless let's have a quick look. Yeah, unless anyone else has a final question for any of the alumni. I think one thing that I always like to ask, if none of the kind of attendees of these events have asked, is what was kind of biggest challenge for you at Makers? Obviously, you know, you're committing a lot of time to it. It's a huge change for everyone. So was there anything particularly challenging that you had to overcome during the process? Maybe Sam, if I'll start off with you.
Sure. So again, I think having come from like a professional background, which was so completely different, I had to sort of battle with a bit of self-doubt that this was something that I could do and make a go of. Didn't really have any sort of technical background prior to doing Makers, other than the kind of playing around that I'd done on my own in the evenings. So the kind of the step from leaving a career which I was doing reasonably well in and felt relatively secure, into kind of something which was fairly unknown to me, really, in many ways, felt like quite a big leap, I guess, in the beginning. And I think my sense is that's something that a lot of people feel coming into Makers, is this sense of like, am I actually going to be able to do this? But I think ultimately what I found, and what certainly people who I've spoken to who have also been through the course have found, is that Makers provides you with a lot of ways of dealing with that sense of slight sort of underlying anxiety, and actually prepares you really, really well to go to take your first step into this industry and kind of hit the ground running and make a really good go of it.
Lovely, thanks, Sam. And how about for you guys, Natalie? Was there anything particularly challenging that you had to kind of overcome?
I think one of the things that I found challenging, and that they tell you at the beginning, is to get comfortable with not completing anything. So yeah, because it goes by so quickly and it's an intense course and you do so many projects. I'm someone who, at least before I did Makers, I really like finishing things. I find it like frustrating to leave things incomplete. So for me personally, that was challenging, coming into something really new, and intense, and doing lots of different projects. But it's okay to not, I guess, like, you have to sort of trust in the process, and you don't have to. So I actually had time at the end of Christmas to sort of go back to some earlier projects to finish them. But you don't need to get so hung up on that early on in the course, because further down the line you'll be doing bigger projects anyway, and things will start to come together and you'll finish those. And also, I think you realise that actually nothing will ever be 100% complete anyway. And yeah, that's very much true, I think, in the world of software development, where you could always add a sort of finish, you could always add something else to something. So yeah.
Lovely, thanks. And yeah, Mackenzie, will finish out with you, please.
Yeah, so I probably have two things. Firstly would just be the unrelenting nature of the course itself. It is a very, very difficult 12 weeks. You will work very, very hard. You will almost certainly work. I think I might have maybe had a couple of weekends off that I gave myself fairly late on into the course, but I certainly worked the great majority of weekends. And that's also the same when you graduate as well. I think kind of people maybe don't realize coming in that there's kind of two courses within the course, your technical course and then your post-course getting a job, which is stressful in a different way, but at the same time you put a lot of time and a lot of effort into making sure you get a job. So that'd be my first thing, just the nature of it. And that's very different for me, who was a standard kind of 9-to-5 person who never really did overtime or particularly wanted to do overtime to go into something where you did it quite regularly. And the second thing would be that there will be times where you don't get something and the person next to you gets it, or the person opposite to you gets it. Inevitably, how kind of much you think you know coming in, there will be a moment or two like that where you're just not picking something up and you're just not getting it. And it can sometimes be slightly dispiriting if you've got somebody else in your cohort who is picking it up. But again, those moments you just overcome, and those moments you get through, and you do pick it up with the help of your cohort and with the help of the coaches and things like that. So yeah, I'd probably say those two things would be the things I felt hardest to deal with.
Cool, thanks so much, everyone. So I'm going to take the last of these questions because I think they're for more of our side. So I would say like a round of applause, but I don't really know how to do that online. So I'll just be like kind of me on my own. You guys can log off if you like, or if you want to stay till the end, then that's totally up to you. And the last questions I've got here, I should be able to take on. So the last few that we have. So besides Codecademy Challenge and the self-assessment, what else is part of the entry selection? Cool, so the entry criteria, so you're right, Codecademy and Code Wars are the resources that we recommend. After that, you need to write your motivation letter, which I'm guessing is the self-assessment that you mentioned there. If our admissions team think that that's sufficient and you're ready to come in for a pairing session, you're able to book that in. I think they give you up to 2 weeks of calendar slots, depending on when works for you. In the pairing session itself, you'll do some coding challenges. They're pretty similar to some of the stuff that you'll see on Code Wars, so that's why we definitely recommend. You really should do the resources that we recommend. It's just for your own kind of benefit once you get to that stage. And obviously, they want to see your coding skills, but it's a lot to do with communication as well. Problem solving, how do you stop when something's difficult, or what steps do you take to get to move past it, all of those kind of things. That's definitely what we look for. So moving on to the next one. How can you go about getting sponsorship from a company to support you doing the training? That's not anything that we get involved with personally at all. I think 1 or 2 students have previously had their previous companies sponsor them to do the course, and then they'll return back to their company, but that's not anything that we have any personal involvement with. So I just advise if you're looking to do that with your current employer, just speak to them and see what they can arrange for you. Okay. We also have a question: what would a typical job title be for graduates apart from software engineer? I mean, I guess we see a range of them. Software developer, like junior software engineer, it varies. I mean, a lot of them mean a very similar thing, unless you're going to do a specific like front end or back end role, then maybe that would be a stipulation. But other than that, they're probably reasonably similar to one another. Okay. So we've got a question from Robert. How many people on the course have had an educational background in computing, a degree in CS, etc.? There's not a lot, but there tends to be like 1 or 2 people every couple of cohorts. A lot of the time, the reason that people with computer science degrees will come to do the course is to get experience of the more practical side. So we discussed earlier how the skills that we teach on the course are, it's very practical. It's basically teaching you how to go directly into an engineering team and kind of hit the ground running. And I think kind of anecdotally from some of the TS students that we've seen on the course, that's something that was maybe preventing them from finding their first role. So they've come to us to get that kind of like hands-on, coding every day, working in teams, working using agile methodologies, all that kind of thing. So that's why they come to us, but it's not as if you join from a different background to that you're going to be in a room full of computer science students. The majority of what we do is for people who are looking to switch career. So you won't be kind of like the odd one out if you're the person who doesn't have that experience. Okay, right, the last couple of these, I'm wondering if Kay might be able to help me with. Are you still available, Kay, to jump on to answer a few of these?
I am indeed. It's a bit dark here though, I'm afraid.
It is, no worries. There was one from earlier that was upvoted quite a lot that I just wanted to get your thoughts on before we go. So there was a question from Jason asking, is the job offer guarantee likely to be reinstated as soon as the course returns to onsite, or would it depend more on the state of the economy, job market, etc.?
Yeah, great question. The job offer guarantee, the main thing that affects this is whether we feel we can like actually guarantee anything. The economic situation is a little uncertain right now, and so it wouldn't be fair for us to say, everything's really set in stone and we're running like everything totally normally and everything's in a straight pipeline. Because the situation is a bit different, we are suspending that for new applicants for now. It seems likely that when the COVID-19 situation calms down and we can run back on site, that we're going to revisit that, but they're definitely not tied together, and there's likely to be a significant long-running economic impact, and so it's likely to be a longer-term thing, and we would revisit it quite carefully alongside other options that might be available. The main thing is for us to be honest with you and straight up, and also to make sure that you're in the best possible position to achieve your career goals with us.
Lovely, thanks, Kay. So I think that was the main one that I wanted to see your thoughts on, just because I know that had a lot of upvotes. So with the rest of these, like I said, we're going to answer them in the blog post in the follow-up. Some of our admissions team would be the best people to answer these, and some of the coaches will be the best people to answer these. So just to make sure we're giving you the kind of best possible answers, we'll kind of get their thoughts, and then as everyone registered on Eventbrite, we've got your email. So I'll drop you an email when all that information's been gathered together, and then if you've got any questions off the back of that, hopefully we can go from there. So the last things to mention to everyone, firstly, thank you so much for joining us online. this is the first online event we've done for a little while, so it's really great to see so many of you participating, and that you're still keen to join us. I know that we're really keen to run more on-site cohorts, so it's great to see that you guys are looking forward to doing that. If you're looking to see what you can kind of achieve at the end of the course, I know we've met some of our alumni today, but we're also running our demo day event, which will be in 3 weeks' time on Thursday, the 9th of April. So it's going to be online like this. We're just working out a few details as to how that's going to be delivered. But if you want to see some more examples of final projects and that kind of thing, then we'll be sending you the link to sign up, and you'll be able to join that event as well. As well as that, I mentioned the alumni survey that we recently did. It's got a whole bunch of information, as well as the earning trajectory. You can also see different languages that our developers go on to code in, all sorts of different information about kind of life after you finish Makers. So we'll be sending that your way as well. So the final thing there is to do. Lovely. Yeah, that's everything. So thank you so much for tuning in. If you look in the chat section, I'm going to be posting those links in just a moment, so you can get the full information there. Lovely. Thanks for joining us today, everyone, and we'll see you soon.